Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. There are two things I would like to clarify. That's important for climate finance. So land rights, yeah, for Indigenous peoples and local communities, all of us here who are Indigenous peoples, land rights is embedded in the territory, and Indigenous peoples know what their land rights are. They can map and define their governance over that. Land rights is embedded. So what the tenure facility does is to directly support Indigenous peoples organizations to have their land rights be put on paper, and the ones that already put on paper measured, and the ones that have land rights already to govern, protect, and defend those land rights. So those are the two main. So it could be for the Indigenous peoples, paper is not as important, but for the external party, they like to see on paper the evidence of land rights. So just to emphasize that. So for climate finance, if we notice the COP, the COP has promised $1.7 billion for land rights for Indigenous peoples and local communities. So the question that we all know is that Indigenous peoples and local communities need to receive this directly. So the question, and then the position of the Indigenous peoples is to receive this directly. So the finance that is now, the question is now how. So there's one simple message that was given by the head of government. And the simple message is this money is supposed to now pay for the effort of all Indigenous peoples and local communities to protect existing forests, because they have done so much work to protect these forests now. This fund should be paying for those. So it is not anymore to do projects, but already to continue the way they manage and protect forests. So the question that when we go home, the how is our homework. The how is direct. Now we know very little, 1% goes to Indigenous peoples. We know that. Now why? So our question is why? So it's our homework to figure that one out. 1% of the ODA, yeah? So remember, there are two sources of 1.7 billion. It's government and it's private philanthropy. So the how has to be figured out from the two sources. Yeah, so I think that's our homework. So one source is the Indigenous peoples trust in partnerships with civil society organizations they work with already. Yeah, and then there's another question here of how will the money flow? So it's a very important question, and it's a question we need to answer because there is very little time, and we know it. We need to implement. So I think we have the answers to that, and I can just leave it with the panelists. But the other part is compliance. This is what you were saying. Yeah, we have our own way. We have to find the middle way. So it may not be the ODA reporting system compliance. It may be a unique way. So then use before the philanthropic money can be used for that. Maybe that's just how I would leave it. But I think we know in this room, I think we know how to do this, but we need to really listen to the Indigenous people's voices, how to do this, to get directly. There's a life plan, there's all the needs of health education, and there is a way to do this right, monitoring, resources. We know, but the how, I think we need to talk to them. Yeah, they have to be in the room. They have to be at the table to talk about this.
Despite the many pledges people in power have made, the rate of deforestation is still increasing. To stabilize the climate, we must stop deforestation and biodiversity loss. To scale forest protection, we must recognize and invest directly in forest communities. They hold the solution to protecting forest and biodiversity. Climate finance to scale ecosystem protection must be community-centered and must bring direct finance to local communities who are on the front lines.
When a member of a forest community can feel recognition from an international audience, that becomes very empowering and it gives more motivation for them to continue with their efforts. The next step is for that voice to be heard during discussions and decision making about forest conservation and climate change. It is also very important that funding for forest conservation reaches them on the ground.
A raiz mesmo do problema é isso, que quem mais desmata é quem leva mais. E quem mais preserva, às vezes não leva nada. E com isso a gente tem visto, né, um grande problema na estrutura mesmo do fundos climático. E com o resultado disso, a gente tem visto que é muito difícil os povos indígenas acessar direto esses recursos. E também muito menos as mulheres indígenas. O mundo precisa conhecer o trabalho que nós prestamos para a floresta, para o clima, para o planeta, para o mundo. Eles precisam conhecer a nossa cultura.
To our indigenous peoples, traditional owners, local communities, friends and partners, we hear you. In response, forest trends along with Recoft, Wildlife Works, Everland, and Green Collar came together to facilitate the People's Forest Partnership. This partnership is fully committed to supporting forest people's right to participate equitably in climate and conservation finance. Together, our goal is to drive an unprecedented amount of climate finance to indigenous and local forest communities.
El programa Coalición de Pueblos y Bosques es una iniciativa nacida, generada de los hermanos del norte, en concordancia, en coordinación con las organizaciones indígenas de la Amazonía suramericana. Su intención es llegar directamente a los pueblos indígenas para favorecer en el desarrollo de los planes de vida indígenas. Por lo mismo, los pueblos indígenas estamos decididos ser parte de ella.
Please join us in advancing the leadership and voice of forest peoples everywhere. Join the People's Forest Partnership.